Daniel Craig's 15-year run as Bond came to an end, with the final scenes of No Time to Die. And with the post-credit title card saying James Bond will return, speculation around who the next Bond will be has been on overdrive. Could it be Idris Elba, Henry Cavill, Tom Hardy, or even Tom Holland? In this video, we go through the probability of the top rumoured actors to play the next 007, and see what the Bond producers, Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, have said about the next Bond. First off, we have the bookies' favourite, Henry Cavill.
He was convinced that the world wasn't ready. What do you think?
Sometimes. Just never when I'm stealing things. Not very good at this whole subtlety thing, are you?
James Gunn announced in late 2022 that Cavill would no longer be playing Superman, and he has also stepped down from playing Geralt in the Witcher TV show past Season 3. So there is perhaps a Bond-size opening in the British actor's busy schedule to become the next Bond. He's obviously got the look and body for Bond, and also has history with the character. In 2006, Cavill, then aged 23, auditioned for the role of 007, but narrowly missed out to Daniel Craig.
They told me I was close. Yeah.
And yes.
They told me it was ultimately down to, and this is what I've been told, this was just down to me and Daniel, and I was the younger option.
Now more experienced, and around the same age as Daniel Craig when he took the role in 2006, Cavill certainly ticks most boxes. His performance in Guy Ritchie's A Man and Uncle in 2015 clearly shows that Cavill can play the suave spy with tongue-in-cheek humour, and many saw this performance as a sort of public screen test for Bond. The two factors playing against Cavill becoming the next Bond are that he's 40 years old, and from an interview with Lad Bible, Barbara Broccoli, who runs the Bond franchise along with her half-brother Michael G. Wilson, said that they haven't even written a script yet for the next Bond film, meaning that if Cavill was cast, he would probably be around 42 to 44 years old by the time his first Bond film is released. Cavill is certainly in fantastic shape and looks like he's in his early 30s, so perhaps, in this case, age is just a number. Also, Cavill has been Superman for around a decade, and many feel that he was wasted in the role, with the DCEU suffering from constant tone changes, reshoots, and overall chaos. And again, he seems to have been misused in the Witcher show. He clearly has such passion and respect for the character of Geralt, and reports stated that he often knew more about the character than the directors and producers of the show itself. He is currently working on bringing the Warhammer universe to Amazon in an acting and executive role, so perhaps Cavill is looking for more control over the roles he takes, as he has been messed around before in the DCEU and The Witcher. Being James Bond is around a 10 to 15 year commitment, where he would have much less creative input. So for that reason, despite on the face of it being the perfect casting for the role, I'm giving Henry Cavill a 60% chance of becoming the next Bond. Next up, we have Aaron Taylor-Johnson.
See, Lemon, God rest his soul, was a don.
The 32-year-old British actor, best known for his roles as Kick-Ass, Quicksilver in Avengers Age of Ultron, and more recently Tangerine in 2022's Bullet Train. In September, there were reports that Taylor-Johnson had impressed Bond producers Broccoli and Wilson in a screen test for Bond. He's 32, but has 20 years experience in Hollywood, and he's less of a major household name than Cavill or some other contenders in this list, which I believe gives him a better chance than his well-known competition, as they usually don't go for big actors to play Bond. Daniel Craig, for example, was definitely not a big name before his debut Bond film Casino Royale. Also, Taylor-Johnson is more likely to take on a decade-long, career-defining role than perhaps Henry Cavill would, and one would imagine that he would come at a cheaper price than a famous actor. Taylor-Johnson is playing Kraven the Hunter in October, which is his first mainstream lead action role since Kick-Ass over 10 years ago, and it will be interesting to see how audiences take to his performance as a comic book villain. The issue I see with Aaron Taylor-Johnson becoming the next Bond is that although undoubtedly he is a versatile and good actor, many, myself included, find him to be incredibly arrogant in his performances and in interviews. There is also the controversy of his wife Sam Taylor-Johnson being 23 years his senior. They met when she was directing 50 Shades of Grey, with Aaron only being 18 and Sam being 42 at the time. So if announced as Bond, you can be sure that this aspect of his personal life would receive a lot of coverage in the press. Despite these reservations, I believe Aaron Taylor-Johnson has a very high chance of becoming the next Bond, due to his age, look, and acting ability. I give him a 70% chance. Next on the shortlist is Richard Madden.
Tell me you've never felt like you should be somewhere else. Doing something else. Tell me you've never seen my face before.
From his breakout role in Game of Thrones as Robb Stark, to his portrayal as Icarus in Marvel's Eternals, to David Budd in the TV show The Bodyguard, and Mason Kane in the TV show Citadel, Richard Madden is a serious contender for the Bond role, and he fits the age range that Broccoli and Wilson have set for the next Bond. Wilson said the following in regards to having a younger actor play Bond. We've tried looking at younger people in the past, but trying to visualise it doesn't work. Remember, Bond's already a veteran. He's probably been in the SAS. He isn't just some kid out of high school that you can bring in and start off. That's why it works for a 30-something. And Richard Madden is 36. And with greying hair, he does give off the experienced, but still relatively young look. Madden said the following when asked about the speculation around him becoming the next Bond. I'm more than flattered to be mentioned. For people to consider putting me in that role, I'm very flattered and thankful. It's a really brilliant thing to be in. If you talk about it, you'll curse it. And yeah, I love the movies, I've read all the books. So Madden seems keen for the role, and despite not being the first choice of many, he's probably the second or third choice for most. And perhaps a safe approach is a route that Broccoli and Wilson may go down. I'd give Richard Madden a 40% chance of becoming the next Bond. Next up is Hollywood legend Tom Hardy.
Shootout, right, is a shootout! You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling.
You think darkness is your ally?
Now Tom Hardy needs no introduction. From Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, Venom, The Revenant, Warrior, Legend, Mad Max, and Peaky Blinders. Tom Hardy is one of Britain's most celebrated actors, with decades of experience. This experience and longevity may, however, be his downfall. Hardy is 45 years old, and as Broccoli and Wilson said, it will be a 10-year plus commitment for 007. And although Bond is a pinnacle role for many British actors, one wonders whether Tom Hardy would want to commit the next 10 years of his life to Bond. However, if Hardy was up for the role and looking at his training for Warrior, Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, and Charles Bronson, as well as him competing and winning in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament just last year, Hardy can commit to a role and work harder than most actors would. So despite statements from Broccoli and Wilson regarding the next Bond being in their 30s, if Hardy wants the role, I wouldn't bet against him. It would certainly bring interest back into the franchise post Daniel Craig, as Tom Hardy is a big name, and I could see the announcement of Hardy as the next Bond going down really well with audiences. Saying this, I still think it's rather unlikely, so I'd give Tom Hardy a 30% chance of becoming the next Bond. The penultimate competitor for the Bond role, we've got Idris Elba.
Okay, so we're on the same page. Great.
Okay, so we're on the same page. Great.
Okay, Michael.
Okay, Michael.
No,
what
seriously.
you doing? No, seriously.
How old are you?
How old are you?
Oh no.
Elba has been in almost every major franchise. The MCU, the DCEU, Star Trek, Fast and Furious, and even the absolute horror of a movie, Cats.
Ineffable.
Now the obvious topic that surrounds Idris Elba and any other non-white character playing Bond is the fact that James Bond in Ian Fleming's books and in every single Bond film up to now has been white. Broccoli said this when asked about potentially casting a black or Asian character as Bond. He should be British, so British can be any ethnicity or race. And I think one of the successes of Bond is that it isn't afraid to change with the times. She also goes on to say, I think that it will be a man, because I don't think a woman should play James Bond. I believe in making characters for women, and not just having women play men's roles. And in so, increasing Idris Elba's chances to become the next Bond, whilst also making Melissa McCarthy's chances rather slim. So Idris's colour doesn't negate him from becoming the next Bond, but his age does. At 50 years old, and with the script not even written yet for the next film, if he was to be announced as the next Bond, Alba would be committing to the role for his entire 50s and early 60s. Alba has been rumoured for the role for around a decade now, and his answers have changed over time. from "it's such an honour to be mentioned in a frame for the next Bond" to now saying, and I quote, "A lot of people talk about another character that begins with J and ends with B, but I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to be John Luther, that's who I am." And I rate Alba's chances of becoming the next Bond at 10%. Finally, we have Regé-Jean Page, who shot to fame in the Netflix drama Bridgerton, which has become Netflix's second most watched show of all time, behind Squid Games. He's recently been in Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, and the spy thriller The Grey Man with Ryan Gosling. Page is 35 years old, British, and an up-and-comer in Hollywood. His casting as Bond would mark a change for the franchise, and could perhaps bring a lot of controversy, as Page is obviously not white. However, as the producers said, that's not a problem for them, so he's still very much in the running for the role. The Russo brothers, who recently directed him in The Grey Man, said this when asked about his potential to be the next Bond. "He's fantastic. I mean, he has more charisma in his pinky than most people do in his entire body. We'd watch him do anything. He's a very savvy performer and has so much charm." And I think they're right. He's certainly got presence, and one could easily see him bringing class and sophistication to the James Bond character. At the age of 35, and not being tied down to any major franchises, as well as being famous, but not too famous, as to distract from his portrayal as Bond, I'd give Regé-Jean Page a 50% chance of becoming the next Bond. So let's see who, in my humble opinion, is the most likely to become the next Bond. In last place at 10%, we've got Idris Elba, followed by Tom Hardy, who's at 30%, the main detractor for both actors being their age. Richard Madden at 40%, and then in third place, with a 50% chance, we have Regé-Jean Page. In second place, who would be my personal favourite, as I think he has the star power, acting ability and experience, we have Henry Cavill, with a 60% chance of becoming the next Bond. And in first place we have Aaron Taylor-Johnson, with a 70% chance. So now I want to know, do you agree or disagree with my rankings, and who do you want to become the next Bond? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, then perhaps you'll enjoy the next Superman video, which is on your screen now. On the channel we review the best movies and shows around, as well as the occasional video essay. So if that sounds good, then please consider subscribing to Film Club. Thank you, and see you again.